Known for its wet and wild, moderate thrills, Congo Falls has been doing this for decades, but are its days numbered? Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are and that's who we care about.
Hey, let's kick this off by thanking our Prestige members. Thank you, Miss Mandy, 1983, Lil Mac, 21, Brian Hauser, 330T, Logan Lipper, Aaron Bort, Jacob Fix, Damon Barnes. Sorry, I need to catch my breath at this point. Stephen Hornack, Eric Grau, Ian Crawford, Dustin Jackson, Songstress Mikio, and Dakota Cole. Thank you guys so much for supporting Tower Topics at the highest level. That's the prestige level. If you want to be involved in Tower Topics, there's a link in the description. Members get early access to the videos, exclusive content, exclusive live streams, and hey, some tiers you can get some free stuff. So smash that link in the description.
You know, Ryan, it's been the rage around Six Flags, since the merger, rides being retired, throughout the chain, a lot of them without any type of, fanfare, any, type of last chance to get in your final rides. So far, Kings Island hasn't had to remove any rides. There certainly has been rides targeted. I know that, there's rides that the park, specifically General Manager Mike Kuntz, has fought hard to want to keep, or they might have already been removed. But you mentioned Congo Falls. I think if there's one ride that they might be willing to let go, I do think it would be Congo Falls. And I think there's some evidence that that would be the ride. I think we're at that point with the ride's history, what they're doing with Six Flags, the pressure to remove some of these older rides. If the ride has any kind of an issue this year, beyond pumps or needing a sensor replaced, I think you're going to see that ride just shut down for the year, and I don't think it'll ever open back up again. So I do think if you're a fan of Congo Falls, make sure that you do get in those rides, because if it does even make it through the year without any kind of issues, you just don't know, that they're going to give you that opportunity to come get those last rides. So just make sure that you ride it, for those final times, and in case that is the situation.
Yeah. So presumably, if it's like, okay, anything more than like a sensor or a basic issue, and we're just going to shut it down, that tells me that it's probably not going to open in 2026 regardless. Because that would mean
because you're not going to be able to keep, everyone else in the chain is losing rides, then you start getting, well, why isn't Kings Island?
Extreme Skyflyer.
I think, but I think there's some, they're looking at the reliability of rides. They're wanting to see that daily log sheet, what opened for the guests, what could they do that day? What rides were down? Why were they down? Was it weather related? Or was it another problem? Do we have to get a replacement part? So those are the things they're looking at real closely. And if there's a ride that has a lot of downtime, or it's just getting real expensive to keep it going, they're not going to want to keep that ride around. So it's important to have reliability of all the rides at Kings Island. You want to make sure you check that box every day. So when the corporate team looks at the report, they saw that, across the board, Kings Island had everything open. That's a good thing. They can't keep coming at you to take this ride out. But if something's down, every third day, every fifth day, it's not operating, it's down for 3 days in a row, and then they're going to start zeroing in on that and saying, well, why are we keeping this ride? It's not reliable. It's costing us money. And I think Congo Falls is the one ride that I don't think they would fight hard to keep. They're not going to put themselves on the line, to fight for that ride if they have to play the same game that everyone else is. And, you're going to have to lose attraction. Which one is it?
To their credit, I understand it's a high capacity ride. On the busiest days, it has a 3-minute wait. And that's some of the most valuable real estate in the entire park. It's right up front. That ride has no business being right in the front of the park.
Yeah. I think if you did remove it, I mean, that is a prime spot, to put in a nice, A nice flat ride, or even two, because there's enough space there to do that with the right flat rides. And that is one of the things that Kings Island is lacking in its lineup. Sure, they put in Soul Spin and Cargo Loco, but you need more flat rides. There are, the majority of the flat rides are in Planet Snoopy. They're kids rides. You need more, and you go through some of these other parks in the chain, and there's just a number of great flat rides. Cedar Point has great flat rides. Carowinds has great flat rides. Kings Dominion has a lot of fun flat rides. Kings Island does not have the depth. They've got good ones, but not the depth that other parks have. And where Congo Falls sits, that certainly is prime real estate to add at least one, maybe two flat rides there. So that's another reason why I think that its days could be numbered.
Or kind of sits next to the Timberwolf. Now follow along here. That's a lot of property there. Front gate
Certainly
coaster.
is.
Well, not a front gate coaster, not like Gatekeeper, but something in the front of the park that would be visually appealing, that would be something for the skyline and so on. I think that would be a fantastic location because you could put something large scale there.
You could build something really special there. And I think if you did remove Congo Falls and you took out Timberwolf, I think you would look to fill that spot before you would the Vortex plot.
Yeah, and it's funny because you're kicking the can down the road, because the Vortex plot really needs to be filled, because I honestly feel like that's like a big gap in the teeth of the park, But
yeah, I mean, there's, if you only went to Kings Island, starting with the Vortex being there, it feels like there's that big void there. But I remember when there wasn't anything there before the bat, 1981. So I do remember those years, but there were also a lot of trees, that were there. You couldn't look across, from Coney Mall, and you couldn't look in and see the beach station, which you can now. You never could see that. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of that, elephant in the room. Like, what are we going to do here, with this spot? And the longer it goes, the more special, something has to be to kind of fill that void, left there by the departure of the Vortex. Vortex was iconic. So whatever it is, it's going to have to be, one of those special coasters. You can put one there, but you'd also have plenty of room to do something special, big, massive, if you took out Congo Falls and you took out Timberwolf.
Just pitching this idea for you. Launch swing coaster. Just imagine the visuals of being like, a launch, and then it turns so like you see the broadside of the train from the parking lot, from outside the park. I think that would be really cool.
That would be really a really good visual, Ryan. If they were to do that, I would get my vote for a wing coaster in that spot. I do not vote for a wing coaster in the Vortex spot, but I think in the right location, and I think that would be the right location. Putting it where Congo Falls and Timberwolf is, I think that's where that would be the ideal spot for that. And especially like you said, when you're driving past the park or you're in the parking lot, what a visual that would be.
I think it's marketable in that. I know that, like you've mentioned on the show before, that like, how the skyline looks and stuff isn't like a huge consideration, but you have to admit there is a marketability, because that's what they did with Gatekeeper. Like Gatekeeper, part of the package isn't necessarily the ride, it's the signature of the park with it going over the front gate. And I think it could be something similar with Kings Island. Not necessarily, again, that it goes over the front gate necessarily, but something in the front that spans the front of the park. So like the whole like west end of the park goes vertically. So it's something that like looks cool and maybe lights up or whatever.
Are you keeping in Vertigo as part of this idea that you have, this vision in your head?
I think you could. That would get my vote. I love in Vertigo, but let's be honest here. If they do that, then everything in the front of the park's going. In Vertigo, Congo, and Timberwolf. It's going to be all three. Well, in Vertigo is a great ride. It is dated technology. It's very low capacity, and that's probably the way that they're going to see it. I don't think it's super like high maintenance or anything, though.
No, it's still a fun ride. It's unique, and you don't see those everywhere. So I would, love to see that stick around for the long term, I think. But the more I think about it, the more excited I get, about the opportunity that you would have in that action zone area. If you did take out Congo Falls, you did take out Timberwolf, and what you could do with those spots.
Yeah. So listeners, we want your opinion. If you had the choice, save Congo Falls or bulldoze it in the hopes of something better, leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts.
Do you like
Hey, Don,
riding Congo Falls better, or do you like standing on the bridge, the exit there, and just getting soaked that way?
when I was little, I used to do the bridge thing a lot. As an adult, I don't like to get wet in that regard.
Yeah, well, my daughter was, oh, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years old. I couldn't get her off the bridge. I mean, she would stand there for, an hour, hour and a half, just stand there and love getting
Just be
soaked.
soaked. Yeah.
That was just like the greatest time for her. So I mean, it's there's going to be all those memories too, with this ride. But I do think, if you see that there's any problems with it, you see that, it gets not just a 1-day closure, but it's shut down because it needs something beyond, the sensor, or, a pump. And I just don't think that they would put the money back into it to, wait for the part to get there and then start it up for a few more weeks, whatever's remaining of the season. I think they would just say, just shut it down, and that's it. Now, if that happens that way, where it does go down in like end of June or July, never reopens, you definitely don't get that chance to get your last splash on it. Not that they would tell us that it's the last time that you can ride it as it gets into the fall and they get ready to shut it down for the year. So for me, my recommendation to you as a Kings Island fan, if you like that ride, it is running on the days that you're there. Make sure that, that you take a ride, because you just don't know. I do think it is on the clock.
Okay. Let me ask you 2 questions, Don. The first one, do you think it's the same sin to have a ride where they know that, like, okay, if a pump breaks or something, it's just never going to reopen, and then announce, after the season's over, like, oh, by the way, it's retired? Is that the same sin as like King Ka, where
No,
they knew it ran the entire time, and then it was after it closed for the season, it's like, oh, by the way, bye? I don't think it's the
no,
same
I
thing.
don't, because I think if it showed that it was reliable and it was operational, a very high percentage of the time, it was, one of those top rides for reliability, then I think there's an argument that you don't take it out. So I think there's a difference there.
Okay. That leads me to my second point. This is not our buy or sell segment, but this is
Yeah.
a bonus buy
Yeah,
or sell.
but I don't think, I'm going to go back to, I don't think they would retire it just to retire it if it's reliable. I think there would be the argument, we need to keep this. I'm saying, is it on the clock if it has, a problem this year where we have to put some money into it to get it running again? That's when I think it's on the clock.
Okay.
That its days are numbered. So
Perfect segue.
I don't think they would want to, keep putting money into it if it showed that it was a problem, right? Because I think then Six Flags has its, the ammunition, the what they need to be able to go to the park and say, look, it's not reliable, it's broken down again, we need to replace it, retire it. I think then they have what they need to tell the park this ride has to go. Right now, the park can fight back and say, hey, it's popular, it gives this many rides, it's operational every day. As long as they can say that, I think it's okay.
So what I was going to say, and you keep on leading me into the perfect segue. Buy or sell. Congo Falls opens in 2026.
Buy or sell. I am going to, unfortunately, I have to sell.
I think so too. I think that if what we're speculating is correct and they're not putting any money into it, it's because you amortize. If they had to put $50,000 into it, that's amortized over certain years. You can't do that if the ride's not around next year. So preserving it for future years is not part of the equation. So yeah, I sell. I don't think it's going to open. So if you want to ride it, get your final rides in. Don,
we'll see. We'll revisit this in the fall, or early next year, and we'll see if where Tower Topics was right, where Tower Topics was wrong. I think that's going to be some fun as we get more episodes in the book, and we start approaching that 300 400 episodes. We're over 3 years into this, doing Tower Topics, and then I think at that point in time, we'll be able to have enough, and we can have a new segment, always show where Tower Topics was right or Tower Topics was wrong.
Get hats like Elon Musk has that says Tower Topics was right about everything. Would you buy that? Put in the comments.
we have a really good batting average, right now, but the thing about when you step up to the plate, you're going to have some times where you're just not going to hit it right. But I do think, when I look at that ride, I do think if there's anything that is beyond that minor repair, like a sensor, that they're just going to say, just, you know, just shut her down for the year. And then that will be it. So,
That's
but
all
I think
she
they have
did.
to have a plan, though. You have to have a plan. You just can't leave that area vacant for, 5 years.
Oh, really? Tell Vortex that.
I know, but I'm just saying you just can't. You just can't.
All right, Don, let's move on to some Tower Topics tidbits for your information. So let's kick this off. So work on Soak City Water Park continues at a brisk, crisp pace. Soak City opens May 24th with the new River Racers water slide set to debut. So that's really exciting. I've been driving past the park and see it actually taking formation and stuff, and it looks like it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a really fun water slide.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's impressive looking and very colorful. And it's a nice, it complements the other attractions in Soak City. And there's a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, about it, and rightfully so. So I'm looking forward to, it opening Memorial Day weekend and, seeing what everyone has to say about it. And like I said, it's certainly a great visual.
So moving along, the Kings Islands quietly scrub the park's website, removing references to Don from this podcast's name from the blogs and other sections, what appears to be a continued effort to try to erase him from the park's history.
Erased from existence.
Also worth noting, the black and white framed photo of Diamondback that once hung in guest services has been taken down. Don was visible on the train in that photo. It's been replaced with a far less impressive shot, essentially the same view that you get by taking a couple steps out of guest services. It looks like a last-second replacement, and that's likely what it is. No legitimate reason to replace the original professionally composed Diamondback photo, unless, of course, someone took it down and it featured a figure that was bigger than them.
Yeah, let's start with the removal of the name on the blogs. I think I wouldn't put that as necessarily, something that someone there, wanted to just try to erase me. I think if you look at the blogs, since I left, they stopped putting bylines on it. It was the Kings Island team for a while. Now there's just nothing. It's just a post, which means there's nothing that the audience can really connect to. There's no personality or anything behind it. It's just information more than anything else now. So it's not really used as storytelling or firsthand experiences or anything like that, which I was doing. But I think that that's more of it's now consistent with the other blogs that they've published since I left. So I don't put anything really. I don't look at that as them being petty or anything like that. Now in terms of the photo,
the photo, by the way, that's what you're looking at on your screen. It was hanging in guest services. So it's a black and white version of this photo. Don is the middle of the train, sitting on the right from your perspective, watching this on YouTube. And I hope
they put like one of those smiley faces over it too. I think last year. So I mean, it's just that is very petty. Doing that kind of stuff, something that you would see, done at the high school level, not at the level of major amusement park. A company, billion-dollar company. You don't see people act that way typically in a company that size. But that's what we have here. It is what it is, Ryan. I mean, they can attempt all they want to erase me from history, as you said with that clip there.
Let's play it again.
Erased from existence.
Yeah, I mean, they can try all they want with that, but I've been a face in the park, a presence, for sure since 1981. I started riding the racer all the time. Then the years I worked there, I'm on a first name basis with literally, thousands of Kings Island fans, to where if we see each other on International Street, or if we saw each other at a Reds game or something, we have a conversation. I know who they are, and we're talking again, thousands of people that you got to think of all the associates that worked there, throughout the 80s and, on to today, and the thousands of season pass holders, that have been going to the park 30, 40 years. I'm talking, I know people now that, maybe they were a ride associate on the racer. And now, I talk to their grandkids, when I see them at the park and that. So I'm multi-generational now with people. So no matter how hard they want to try to erase me or not have any, anybody thinking about me or somewhere in the park, good luck with that. That's never going to change as long as I don't step away from public life. You got no shot of reaching your end goal there of erasing me from history.
Erased from existence. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
I don't know why they do it. I mean, I really don't. I would think that you'd have more important things to do. You got a new, water attraction that's opening. You got the food and wine festival and all that, and you're focused on, hey, we got to take that picture down. Somebody might recognize Don. I think that's.
And it's not like it's a portrait of you. You're like one
of 30 some riders on the train. But no, he's in the picture. We can't have that. And there's other places in the park where that picture hung that's no longer there. So I can tell you they missed one spot. So So by the time you listen to this episode, if you're listening to it at 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, by the time the park opens at 10, you might see that that's been removed. But
don't tell them where it is, though. Make him look.
No, I won't tell them where it is. But I think it's all you can do is laugh, Brian. About it. It's just amazing to me that there's somebody that's that bent on, we can't have his name out there. We can't have a likeness of him out there. We can't do, just, grow up and do your job. And, Ryan and I will come to the park and we'll just enjoy it like the millions of other people that go there every year. You do your thing, we'll do our thing, and everything works out great.
I just hope they don't take down my picture. I'm just kidding. There's no picture of me in the park, unless
there won't be now. There won't be now.
There won't be now.
There won't be now. I think. They gotta know that people follow the show. They're fans of the show. They know who I am, and it really is just the credibility hit on them when they do things like this. And I don't see where there's a win for them when they do things like this. It's just don't worry about it.
It's a very short-term feeling good about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I left in 2023, and I felt grateful for my 17 years there. I had no animosity, nothing about it, and I was, looking forward to getting out and doing other things, doing this with you, with Power Topics, and visiting other parks, launching my blog, and that chapter was over. I was ready to move on to other things. And then all of a sudden, you start seeing all the little petty games going on, and and that's why we talk about it on the episode, because they keep doing it over and over again, so that's where we are. That's the world we live in today.
I like how it's constant content for us, but let's leave it at that. That's enough.
We wish it. I mean, honestly, we wish it wasn't. I would. I would love it if we got to that point to where people weren't bringing it up to us. Like, did you see they defaced your tombstone? Did you see they put a smiley face over your picture and hey, did you see they took down the photo? Did you see they removed your name from the blog? And it's people that, we care about the Kings Island fans. They care about us. So they bring it to our attention. They're not slipping anything, they're not slipping anything under the rug here. I mean, people are seeing what they do. They know what they do. They know how they've treated us, and it's just not a win for them. And, we wish that it wasn't something that people kept, coming to us with too, because when they do, like you said, it becomes content for the show.
It always will be. And by the way, for those who heard the rumor that was spread by certain people that the show is ending soon because you and I don't get along, and that you're going to go off and make your own sports podcast. Don, I wish that I didn't have to find out from a stranger that you're leaving Tower Topics to do a sports podcast. Unless it was just
that was news to me too, that I was going to be doing a sports podcast. I have been asked about that though. Would I be interested in partnering with someone about that? I think it'd be fun
referred you to somebody about a sports podcast.
That
doesn't mean you can't do Tower Topics.
No. But I think that, if this was 5 or 6 years ago, I think I would have loved to have done, like a Bengals podcast. I watched all the different, Bengal podcasts, and, great content, stuff to talk about. Fans are real passionate about it. Same thing with the Reds, so I would love to do something, like that. But right now with other projects and things, Tower Topics takes up a lot of, this is a commitment by you and me to do this
Oh yeah, it really
every
is.
week and stuff. So just to find the time to do something like that, it hasn't been there, but it would be fun because, if you like the knowledge and things that I share about, Kings Island, my knowledge of the Reds and the Bengals and their history and, just the sports themselves, hockey, if we wanted to talk about the Blue Jackets or something, I think that I'm on the same level with my, passion, my interest, my knowledge of those entities as I am Kings Island. So I'd be able to do it. So, maybe somebody knows something that I don't, and I'm going to be doing that maybe 6 months from now that, that we have, Cincinnati Sports by Don or something, it's a podcast or a blog. I don't know. We'll see.
That sounds like a Larry the Cable Guy skit. You ever fallen asleep in your car and you wake up and you're on a sports podcast? That's what would happen to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's I know I have been on like WOW Sports Talk. I've been on as a guest talking about hockey and different things. So something I could do, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know where that is derived from because I don't think that we've ever given any indication on this show that I would be looking to do a sports podcast. Although we have talked about sports, for the the members, only content. So
I hope the members didn't misinterpret or like, oh, did you hear this about the Bengals? Let's ditch this Kings Island crap and make this a Bengals.
No. We will do this podcast for years to come. As long as we are interested in Kings Island, we will do this podcast.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if anything, we talk a lot about way like future planning and stuff too. Like this isn't a week to week thing for us. We talk about like, all right, because we talked about like the memberships. We knew that was coming up, and it was like probably 10 months that we talked about. Can we pull this off? What should we offer? What would people like? Talking to people and stuff. And then we're double that at this point. And it's, the line graph is really shooting up because once they can start making money off you, they start promoting you a lot more. So now we're kind of like, well, if we do meetups, we've got to take that into consideration because we did Entertainment Junction and, for Attractions Group, which is probably a lot of that was the same audiences here. And we had about 30 or so. And then we did Scene 75 and we had a lot more than 30 and we were not ready for that. Thank you, Scene 75, for making that possible, by the way. So if we did a meetup, especially if we did it, at the park or at Kentucky Kingdom or something like that, I would expect us to have no less than 50 to 100. That would be like my minimum.
Yeah, we're certainly looking at Kentucky Kingdom. We're looking at Stricker's Grove. I think August 10th is the date for Stricker's Grove. So you can mark your calendar for that. We'll make a Facebook group thing for it, an event. We'll put that on there for Stricker's Grove, or if we do one somewhere else. And there's, the possibility of, we did hand off the Attractions Group podcast, back to David Detling. And, he's interested in doing kind of a partnership with us and maybe having a meetup at, whether it's Holiday World or, Indiana Beach, Kentucky Kingdom, something like that. So those meetups are going to become a big part, what we do because we like interact. We had so much fun at Scene 75 just talking to everybody. I think that's, just hanging out somewhere and just talking about stuff. I think that's as much fun as it is, doing this podcast for. So let's, if you are a fan of the show, there's a lot to look forward to in the future. And, we keep, like I said, we have plans, that we're already looking at some things for 2026, 2027 that we can do as the technology that we have to work with improves too. And just getting ideas from our listeners, what they like, especially, the different segments and things, we throw different things out there. We try different things. We've done the Share Your Kings Island Stories. We've done Buy or Sell. We've done the industry, news, roundup kind of a thing. So we put that out there to try to, get a feel for, what works, what resonates with you, our listeners, fans of the show. We do know that you're interested in other parks besides Kings Island, so we're going to incorporate a little bit more of that, into it. So, we'll eventually come, figure out what the best avenues are, and that's going to be another year, or so away. Just tampering with different things. There's other segments we're going to add to it also, and just try some different things. So if something isn't there that you really like if we go a few weeks without buy or sell, it's because we're trying something else just to test the water, see how it works. A lot of A/B testing and things, and just trying to really put together the best show for you, Kings Island fans.
Absolutely. Speaking of buy or sell, Don, let's move on to a segment we like to call Buy or Sell.
Buy or sell. Well, okay, here you go. This is for you, Ryan. Buy or sell. If this summer's new Superman bombs critically and commercially, Six Flags will not push DC Comics into the legacy Cedar Fair parks. The DC Comics IP, they will not push that into the legacy Cedar Fair parks. Are you buying or are you selling? Does this movie have any impact on that?
I'm gonna caveat that. I'm gonna sell what they have to say, but I will say this. If the Superman movie does very well, it'll guarantee that Superman's going to be in the other parks. If it doesn't do very well, then it's going to be par for the course. I don't think that they won't. Everyone who knows who Superman is, they can sell the T-shirts and all the crap and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that movie is going to affect that. But if the movie does well and Superman becomes hot, then they'll knee jerk and they'll make sure that Superman's in all the parks. What about you?
I'm going to sell that the movie will have anything, if it does not perform well, that it wouldn't impact them not doing that because, they've had good success with it. I don't think one movie is going to make that decision. But you're right. If it does, hit, then I think that's going to expedite it, and you're going to see that happening faster.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to some industry headline news.
What do we got?
We've got Busch Gardens Tampa. It's entering an exciting new chapter with a nearly $40 million investment and a new park president at the helm. Under the leadership of Jeff Davis, the park is set to introduce major attractions and enhancements, including the debut of Wild Oasis at Jungala this month. New animal encounters, elevated dining experiences, upgraded guest amenities, and a major transformation of Adventure Island. That park is amazing, but it needs a hug post-COVID.
That park to me it's one of my favorites. It's beautiful. I have some of my favorite rides there. A big fan of Shikra. Montu, is a favorite.
Cheetah Hunt, that's my favorite.
Yeah, I really love that park. I wish I could get there more often. I planned to go last year in the fall, got a little bit derailed, with some of the things I was dealing with. So, I hope that I can, get there, August, September, October range. And, I miss that park. It's one of my favorite plays. I'm glad to see the commitment they're putting into it. What'd you say, $40 million?
$40 million, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad to see that. And, I'm just hoping to get back there soon. And like I said, it has some of my favorite rides, Montu. I think that is, a fantastic ride.
My favorite ride there, the Sky Ride. It's a triangle. Yeah. It's a triangle at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, but it goes over so many animal habitats and stuff. It's so cool. I
like seeing the animals too. I think one of my favorite, is being able to get up close to the alligators, and that's as close as you can really get to one without being right next to one. Without a fence.
Without being Steve Irwin.
without the fence here dividing you. But I like seeing them up close. There's just so many photo opportunities, there with the animals, and let's not forget about the food, right? I mean, the food at Busch Gardens Tampa, for me it was always fantastic. They had that barbecue place right by Shikra. Mm-hmm. You were riding that ride and you just get that smell of the barbecue right there. So as soon as you get off the ride, you got to go have lunch or dinner there now. But their barbecue was so good there. So I really love the food too. And it's one of my favorite parks. So if you've been to Busch Gardens Tampa, leave in the comments, let us know, if you like that park, how does it compare for you to maybe the park in Williamsburg? How's it compare to Kings Island? Let us know.
frankly, I think Williamsburg is twice as good of a park as Tampa. I'm going to say it. I think a lot of people feel that way, though.
I give the edge to Williamsburg. I like Tampa because I like the Florida weather. I like it being hot. So I'm big on that. And I like Montu. That's my favorite of all of them. Between both of those parks, I would take Montu. But Busch Gardens, and Williamsburg, absolutely stunning, beautiful landscaping, everything about it. You just love it. Great rides. Great events that they do there. Their Halloween event, amazing. If you haven't had a chance to experience that, I highly recommend it. I did that a couple years ago. Food, off the charts good at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. So I will be there this year for sure at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and I will give you a full report on how that day and that experience went.
Heck yeah!
Get to ride the new bat. I mean the new big bad wolf. Yeah, I mean the new big bad wolf.
I can see why you made that mistake, because the two, it's so tantamount, because I don't know.
Yes.
We'll be right back with the listener questions. All right, first listener question. Kevin from Ohio. He said, "Hey, Ryan and Don, if Kings Island ever retires QCSC, so Queen City Stunt Coaster, do you think they'll replace it with the wooden coaster that would have been put in the Swan Lake area? I think it would look great there, along with a new lake the coaster goes over."
Well, it certainly would. I think it'd be a better visual than what you have at Backlot Stunt Coaster. The charm that they had when the antique cars were there, I mean, that was lost, and hasn't been replaced. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of visual with what that coaster would have been, would look outstanding, in that spot. But in saying that, number one, that was Jeff Gramke's design. I doubt that he left it behind. Number two, if they were going to use his design, I think they'd have a problem with that, because I don't think that, they're going to look to do it with somebody that, like a GCI, Gravity Group,
right.
Someone that builds wooden roller coasters, designs wooden roller coasters, someone that can take on that liability. I don't think Jeff Gramke would want to, have that liability on himself as an individual, in terms of everything being on him. I don't know that, that ride was going to be like, like the Beast was. It was going to be built, in-house with Kings Island's, personnel, just like the Beast was. So I don't think they don't have the capacity and, wouldn't take that project on, right now. So you'd have to get someone else you have to sell the design to someone, and let them build it, like a GCI. And I think that that's all those things would have to happen. That's why I don't think it would happen, just because there'd be too much red tape and things that they'd have to go through to make that a reality.
I could see them talking to Gravity Group or GCI and saying, like, here's an idea that we had, 25, 30 years ago. Can you do something like this? And then they design their own. But as far as
I think they could definitely, take what that was inspired by. I mean, they could definitely take, that ride and do what Jeff did and kind of, have that as the inspiration to design it. So they could certainly, build something like that. So there wouldn't be any question that you could do it. I would be all for it. I think that would be, a great spot for it. I think if you're looking to retire Backlot Stunt Coaster in the next 3, 4, 5 years, maybe that it has left. I don't know. I mean, it might be around longer, but I think that would be the ideal replacement. And if you're looking for that new, star attraction, I think that's a perfect spot for it, because you can't miss it. You walk by the Eiffel Tower, there it is.
Lisa from Oak Hills, Ohio said, "I'm thinking about adding fun pics to my season pass. Do you think it's worth it? Do they staff the photo booths daily? I feel like I've seen some of them closed on certain rides before. I'm only interested if it's a consistently high quality product, and I'm counting on your words as the ones I need to make this decision."
A lot of pressure there.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit of pressure. You know what, Lisa, I would look to get. I don't have fun pics, but I would look to add it to your season pass, because I think there would be, a lot of value for it. I had the photos on my season pass at Holiday World last year, and I thought it was a tremendous value. Every time I got off a ride, I downloaded that picture and often would use it on my social post. So I think, when you're looking at the rides that are available for this at Kings Island, we're talking about the Beast, Mystic Timbers, Diamondback. I think, and some others, there's rides in Planet Snoopy. I think that it would be, I think you would find a lot of value, in having that. In terms of being staffed, I have seen times where you go by the booth as you're exiting the ride, and they've got the curtain and everything down, and nobody's there. So I think there would be a little bit of that to concern yourself with. But I do think that if you're interested in capturing your moments at Kings Island, I would recommend it. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I got it the first year, and I didn't get it after that, mainly because for me, and I don't know your situation, Lisa, if you got kids or something, oh, absolutely, take the risk. But for me, it was dozens and dozens of photos of me on Mystic Timbers and dozens of photos of me on Diamondback and so on. The one thing that I wish they did more of would be have photographers around the park. They sometimes have them up front, like at the beginning of the day and stuff. But, they used to have a spot when they would sell the photos, like the amazing photos people by where Vortex was. So you can get that shot under the bat wing. So they don't really do that.
I agree with you. There needs to be more of the street photographers and that you can use for fun pics. I think one of the things that comes with it too is you get some of those character meet and greets. They get the photos there, and I think that's a really nice quality shot. From what I saw the last couple of years, the quality looked pretty good from the pictures that I see people posting on social media. So, I think you would find the value. It's only $56.99, something like that. Is the last time I looked, that's what the price was for all season fun picks. So I would certainly look to add that to your season pass. I think you would find it to be a good value.
Yeah. Tom from Pittsburgh, PA said, Kennywood's my home park, and it's home to 3 legendary wooden coasters, Thunderbolt, Racer, and Jackrabbit. If you could trade one of Kings Island's wooden coasters, the Beast, Racer, or Mystic, for one of Kennywood's, what would the swap look like?
Now, Ryan, this is probably going to light up the comments. People are going to think I've lost my mind. And maybe I have. But I would trade Mystic Timbers for Thunderbolt. I absolutely love Thunderbolt. I think it's one of the best night rides out there. I think it's a fantastic coaster. One of my favorites. I love Mystic Timbers, but if the opportunity was there to acquire Thunderbolt, and it could be the same exact layout and design, everything about it's exactly the same, coming to Kings. I love the trains too. I mean, those things are classic. I would make that trade. I think that would be something, me personally. I'm getting a lot of. It'd be like trading a young superstar for an aging veteran guy. Making that kind of a trade because of the age of Thunderbolt versus Mystic Timbers. But
that's like trading Deion Sanders' son for Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
Is that tantamount?
Yeah. I don't even want to talk about that guy. Sure, Sanders. I think that that would be the trade I would make. I would definitely not trade the Beast for any of those 3. I would definitely not trade the Racer for those 3, but I would be willing to swap Mystic Timbers for Thunderbolt. What about you, Ryan? Would you make any of those trade?
I would do Racer for Racer. I love Kennywood's Racer. It's that Morpheus, whatever the word is. Track.
Yeah, you come in on one side and you get on one side, you come back in the station on the other. Yeah, I think there's a lot to like about that ride too. I mean, that's a hard one. I mean, I don't know that you would. That's a great trade, Ryan. I agree with. I mean, again, I think people are going to light us up in the comments for that, but that ride is so good, and so much history. I think that's another piece of this too. When you're making these trades and what those rides mean to you, and all 3 of those Kennywood rides have the ace, landmark status. You do have that with the Racer. You do have that with the Beast. But yeah, I can see why you'd want to make that trade, Ryan. I wouldn't personally. I can see why you would.
Honestly, if like I was the GM of Kings Island, first of all, I'd fire everybody and start over. Kidding. If I was the GM of Kings Island, GM of Kennywood calls me. Was it Ricky Spacuzza?
Yeah.
He called me and said, we can do this trade. Ultimately, I don't think I'd do it, because I think that like there's so much of an attachment to, for at least for me personally, for all three of these rides that I don't.
Time out. When you're in that position, when you're a general manager, whether it's a sports team or it's a theme park, you have to take your personal emotion out of it, and you have to make the trade that's best for your park.
You literally said you would trade Mystic for Thunderbolt because you like the night rides better. That's a personal opinion.
No, I would make that trade because I think it would make the park better having that ride there. I think that people would love Thunderbolt as much as I do. So I would make that trade, but you can't say, well, this ride's been here since, the beginning. I can't trade it. You can't think that way. If your trade of Racer for Racer was going to make Kings Island better, or vice versa, was going to make Kennywood better, you got to make that trade. You want to be able to give your guest the best experience possible.
I think what I'm getting at, though, is the Racer for Racer thing is what comes to mind, but I'm not like wholeheartedly like, oh, I would absolutely do this. Like, I'm not that sold on it.
You're not as adamant as I am about I would definitely trade Mystic Timbers for Thunderbolt. No. And even though Mystic ranks, higher than Thunderbolt and all those, industry polls and all that stuff, there's just a lot to love about, Thunderbolt. It's always been, one of my top 10 wooden roller coasters. Nothing knocks it out of those spots. And, it's not far behind the Beast. And, when you look at, rides like the Voyage, is right up there. Thunderbolt's right in that same conversation for me when you're talking about those top 5, top 6. I like the Cyclone at Coney Island too in New York. I think that's, for me, it's on my top 10. Not many people have in their top 10, but I do.
Yeah. All right. So if you want to submit your questions, tell them where to send them.
You can send your questions and make sure you leave your first name, your city, your state, and you can email it to me at donhelbig@themeparksbydon.com. Make sure in the subject line you put question for TT, just so I know to separate it from the other emails that come in. Or if you're following us on X, and we hope that you do, because as we get into the Kings Island season, we'll be doing a lot more things on our X. We'll be having some polls, trivia, a lot of fun things, opportunity to win prizes. I've got a treasure trove of things in my house that my wife would just love me to get rid of. So we'll be giving away a lot of things through our X. So make sure you follow us again, Tower_Topics, and you can also direct message us there. We'll send you the QR code. We'll get it to you in a matter of days. Just $22 for the shirt, include shipping. It's not going to get there as fast as Amazon. You can order it the same day it shows up at your house, but it will be just a couple of days, and we'll get it to you.
I liked your transition. Yeah, Tower Topics t-shirts. So either email donhelbig@themeparksbydon.com, or send us a direct message, Tower_Topics. Either way, submit your questions or get your t-shirts there. But hey, I'm Ryan here along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.